What's up guys, I'm Adam. Welcome to the channel. We all know there's a lot of passion around football. And with football season here, I thought it would be fitting to go over 3 crazy stories where ex-football players, unfortunately, went off the deep end. Let's take a look. One of the most brutal acts one can do is to murder a family member or loved one who has cared for you and been there for you in your time of need. Where the mind must be in order to commit such an act is a place where no one should go. Tommy Kane is a former NFL player who played for the Seattle Seahawks. Born and raised in Montreal, Canada, Tommy went on to play football for Syracuse University in New York. He excelled as an athlete and in 1988 was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. He played for 4 years as a wide receiver, and though he was never a star player, he did record some decent stats a couple of those years. Unfortunately, due to ankle and knee injuries, Kane was cut from the team after the 1992 season. Shortly after, he moved back to Canada and had a brief stint with the Toronto Argonauts, but that didn't last long. In the years following, the ex-NFL player was said to be battling depression and an ugly cocaine habit. The culmination of once being on top of the world, playing the sport you love, to quickly losing that and developing a drug habit led to the events that would change Tommy and Tommy's loved ones' lives forever. In late 2003, a decade out from his football career, Tommy did the unthinkable. It was November, and Tommy's estranged wife Tamara, still caring for him, decided to stop by his mom's house to convince him to get to a drug detox center. For this loving act, Tommy, in some sort of rage, fueled by the drugs or the depression or something more visceral inside, grabbed her by the hair and dragged her into the kitchen. The mother of his children was then repeatedly hit and hit and hit in the face. She had her head slammed on the ground, and then in one last extremely violent act, Tommy did the unthinkable. He took a knife and thrusted it into her neck. All of this was done by Tommy in front of his mother. This one moment of rage instantly ruined several lives. Tamara was rushed to the hospital, but ultimately succumbed to the injuries. Love and money can make people do unusual things. Sometimes it can be a good thing and inspire individuals to be the best versions of themselves. Other times, it can cause the opposite effect and drive people to obtain this goal by any means necessary. Eric Naposki is a former NFL player who is currently spending out the rest of his life in prison. Naposki was born in 1966 and grew up playing Pop Warner football in Eastchester, New York. At the time, he was a gifted athlete, playing many different positions, and even led his high school team in sacks and tackles as a linebacker. He attended the University of Connecticut on a full football scholarship, but ended up quitting the team over disputes with his coach. Naposki had a bit of an attitude. He later returned to the university and received a degree in physical education. Naposki entered the NFL in 1988 and played with the New England Patriots and Indianapolis Colts. His time in the NFL didn't last long, however, and he ended up playing in a much smaller league with the Barcelona Dragons in Spain. Around this time, a woman named Nanette Ann Johnston was living the high life in California. She met and became the girlfriend of a much older gentleman. His name was Bill McLaughlin, and he was an extremely successful entrepreneur, worth millions. Nanette ended up moving in with Bill in his swank Newport Beach home. Around September 1992, Naposki moved to Irvine, California, and found work as a security guard at a local nightclub. He hadn't built up much money since his time in the NFL was so short, so life wasn't on easy street for him. He rented a small studio apartment and was also finalizing a divorce. Shortly after moving to California, Naposki ended up crossing paths with Nanette. Little did the world know that these two meeting would lead to such a devastating outcome. Naposki and Nanette got close. So close, in fact, that Nanette ended up going out on her millionaire fiancé and had a secret affair with Naposki, an affair that led both of them to a sinister end. With the two lovers' new secret relationship intact,
Nanette and Naposki saw an opportunity to live the life they wanted, free from Bill. If Bill was no longer in the picture, Nanette could collect on his $1 million life insurance policy and other financial assets. On December 15th, 1994, Bill McClain was met by an evil force. While in his kitchen, Bill turned to see an intruder facing him. He was then viciously shot 6 times in the chest, leaving him in a pool of his own blood and the property he worked so hard for. What made this even more devastating was the fact that Bill's own son was the one who found him and called 911. A vision no one should have to see. This was an assassination and not some robbery gone wrong. Naposki, who had visited this property several times, was questioned about this event around the time it happened. However, he was ultimately not charged with anything due to insufficient evidence. His temperament with the officers, though, and constant changing of statements ultimately came back to haunt him. As the case was re-examined, both Naposki and Johnston were charged around 15 years later. Both living different lives now, they were found guilty of this killing. Did lust and hunger for money cause this unfortunate outcome? It seems to never work out when things are taken this far. Pictures can be deceiving, and in this next case, there were many. Anthony McClanahan was born in California in the early 1970s. He was a standout football player at his high school in Bakersfield. He was athletic and had a rather successful collegiate career at Washington State University. After college, Anthony was picked up by the Dallas Cowboys and went through their training camp in 1994. Unfortunately, he never ended up playing a game in the NFL. At this point, he took his talents to the Canadian Football League and spent around 4 years playing with the Calgary Stampeders. Years later, in 2016, Anthony was working as a personal trainer in the state of Washington. It was here where he met his future wife, Carrie, who went by the initials KC. Anthony had a dynamic personality, and the relationship was off to a fast start. Too fast for some. KC's sister didn't have the best feelings about the quickness of it all, and says she was worried. Anthony could be fun, but also erratic at times. In January 2017, the couple were married. Shortly after, they uprooted and moved to Arizona, where they got into volunteer work. It was in these preceding months that Anthony would take a turn for the worst. He became more explosive with KC, and his jealousy was oftentimes scary. Later in the year, his actions were more violent, and he lashed out and even punched KC over a dispute about a donation. His growing tendencies towards violence and this move pushed KC away, and she returned back home to Washington. Her sister recalled that she was frightened making that drive, constantly fearing that Anthony would track her down, but thankfully she made it home safe. Anthony, alone with his son from a previous marriage, moved to Utah shortly after. He thought Utah would be a better location for the two of them because he had family in the state. Anthony continuously kept contacting KC and would try to convince her to be with him. She, having such a big heart, didn't want to be a couple, but did want the best for Anthony and was trying to figure out a way that they could separate amicably. A couple months after being away, KC decided to make a trip to Utah. What was supposed to be an event that would help the couple ended up in tragedy. On November 17, 2017, a bloodied Anthony flagged down police. The ex-football player had blood covering his face and hands and was crawling around on his stomach outside of the apartment complex they rented. He told police that random men attacked him and his wife. The security footage of the complex didn't match up with that story. One of the police officers on scene testified that Anthony faked a seizure while talking to them about the event, probably to invoke some sort of sympathy from the officers. When the officers went to the apartment to check on KC, they were met with a grisly scene. She had cut marks all over her neck. She also had defensive wounds and carpet burns, indicating that she put up a fight and was trying to get away. Unfortunately, KC didn't make it out alive. Anthony eventually confessed to stabbing his wife 16 to 20 times. He also cited the many concussions he received during his time in football as a sort of excuse for his behavior and memory loss. One thing's for sure, Whether it was football injuries that led Anthony towards this violence or just an internal jealous rage, the outcome still stripped away the life of one and ruined the lives of many.
Well, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you here in the future, as I plan on posting 2 to 3 videos per week. So, until next time, take care.